Hey guys, time for another road trip. This time we are going to St. Louis. I'm going with someone from the Antique Radio Club of Illinois to pick up some items that were donated. In particular, I'm going to get some TV related items, one of which I've already tipped my hand about. It is a Norelco Protogram Duo View unit. It is an add-on accessory you could buy back in the day to add or to turn your TV into a projection set. And actually they call it Duo because you can flip between using your TV's built-in picture tube and projecting an image onto the wall, a larger image. So it'll be cool to see if we can get that working. I've already got a TV in mind to be the donor set. So we are going to hit the highway, head to St. Louis, and go there and back in one day, and well, let's see what happens. We are in Missouri, approaching our destination. I think we just have 3 minutes to go, and I'll leave you guys a look at what we pick up when we get there. Mission accomplished. We made it back from St. Louis. Very uneventful drive, just a lot of driving, and we have a car full of stuff. Unfortunately, the sun has gone down, so you can't see it too well. We're going to unload the stuff and put it into my associate's garage. Some of the stuff I'll be taking home, and we're going to go through it in detail. Some of it's going to stay here. I'll try to give you a shot of what we got.
Visual here, because most of this is not a good display kind of a mode.
Yeah, I'll walk around. So here's what we came back with. It all needs to be triaged and gone through. It will all go to a good home. Some will eventually be auctioned off or offered to members of the Antique Radio Club of Illinois. Big prize, I suppose, would be the it's an Atwater Kent, sort of. It's not matching components, and it's not the original breadboard, but those are Atwater Kent breadboard components. It's a radial 17 in rather nice condition, and it's a homemade Nutridyne of some sort. Got a bucket of tubes, including a bunch of nice blue Arcturus. A couple odd looking tombstones, radio test equipment with our Atwater Kent metal guy, very heavy. Transoceanic, Bakelite Westinghouse. So altogether, it was an interesting field trip. Just finished unloading my vehicle, so we can take a look at this, which I think is the main item of interest in this video. This is a Norelco Duo View. The idea was you'd put your existing late 40s TV with a small screen on top of it, hook up some cables in the back, and then you could either watch it as normal, direct view from the front of the small screen, or you could turn a switch, pull this away from the wall, and there's a projection system in the base of this that would project in a much larger image up onto the wall behind it. Now, it's not trivial to hook this up because there's limited electronics inside of this. It has a projection CRT, it has optics, it has a high voltage supply, but all the other signals, of course, the video signal, the audio would come out of your existing TV, but the drive signals for the horizontal and vertical yoke would also come out of your TV. And then, of course, to switch modes between them, you would want your the image to be cut off of your direct view TV and only come out of this one, or vice versa. So, luckily, well, two things. One, I have a TV in mind that I don't mind cutting up a bit. And two, all the service info and owner's manual for this is readily available online for free. In other words, I should have everything I need to make this work. So that's the good. The bad is this is in really rough shape. I spoke with the previous owner when we picked it up, and it had been stored, I think, in a garage, he said. So it has significant condition issues. The wood is delaminating, the joints have really opened up. Like you can see down here, this leg joint, it's opened up quite a bit. And we have a number of issues with veneer separation. Of course, the finish is badly deteriorated, and all the knobs are missing. Now, at least the knobs, I believe, are just 3 really generic-looking knobs, so any 3 matching knobs that fit on those shafts would be okay. I do not think there were any sorts of graphics or logos on the front that are missing. In other words, it's a wooden box. And the idea was to make it fairly plain and generic so it would fit with any decor. So we can glue and tighten and glue down the veneer. Maybe a little bit of loss here and there, but for what it is, I'm not going to put that much effort into it. The TV I have in mind is an RCA 8T241. It's one of the earliest sets I got, I think, before I was making YouTube videos. So I don't think I've ever shown it. It's the 2nd generation after the RCA 630 TS. So they reduced the tube count, simplified the design a little bit, and to be honest, it's kind of ugly. It's kind of a weird design, but it's all there, and it should mate up with this well. There is a limited selection of sets that will work with this. They had to have a certain deflection angle and screen size and type of construction so you could plug it in. What I don't know is with these cables, is everything here? So this is my first time really looking at this in good lighting. I imagine there was supposed to be something that plugged into that and something that plugged into that, and the wires would then go into the TV on top. I don't have those. These look fairly generic. I don't know why this one is so short. It's really stapled up there. Kind of hard to get at. But we'll worry about that later. So what else do we have here? Looks like that is maybe some sort of circuit to compensate for whatever you hook this up to, so that you, maybe for horizontal linearity or size control, something like that. There is a chassis up in there with a few tubes on it and a power supply. Again, I think that is to maybe translate some of the incoming signals to get them into the proper range for this particular CRT. That is the high voltage supply. And that's a projection unit. It's a protogram. It's the same thing that is in my Scott 6T11 tabletop set. They sold these as kits. You could get just this part. You could get, of course, this Duo View. They made some projection sets of their own with a built-in screen, and then, of course, Scott used it in some of their sets. So inside here is a 3-inch CRT. That is the base. That's a deflection yoke, focusing, and that is the business end, 3-inch. It's going that way. Inside this is a mirror that is angled, I believe, like this, a front surface mirror. Or no, sorry, the mirror is over here. Well, there's also a mirror here. I think there's a convex mirror over here that takes that and maybe enlarges, focuses it, whatnot, onto this. So this CRT is actually going through a mirror. There's a hole cut in it. And that's at a 45-degree angle. So it goes that way, bounces off that mirror, goes back this way, hits this mirror, and then gets projected towards us. And then this circle here is actually a lens of sort itself. It is a corrective lens that is supposed to compensate for any defects in the rest of this stuff. And it's supposed to be, I believe, fairly well matched to all this. There are adjustments, there are screws on all this stuff to get all the angles and all that stuff right. You do not want to have to mess with that if you do not have to. So as dirty as this is, I would not recommend, unless you have to open this up and touching any of that stuff. There are special adjustment instructions, but you need some special test patterns, I believe, to do it, or you put something on the face of that CRT to put cross hatches, something like that. I forget exactly what it is, but that's not a very well published system, so we're not going to have to, hopefully we don't have to deal with that. You can see there are adjustments here too that are rather rusty, going to things, and this is mounted on a spring. In other words, there are adjustments all over the place. And I've heard these are finicky, as you might imagine. And the image quality, what can you get out of this 24-inch diagonal display? No, it's not huge, but compared to the 10-inch direct view CRT, well, it's two and a half times larger. So yeah, they sold them. There are wheels on the bottom, so you could slide it just going this way, basically, to pull it away from the wall or push it back to the wall. One of the wheels is broken off, but I do have it. For now, I'm going to put this to the side, but the plan eventually will be to carefully take this stuff out and start clamping and gluing up the cabinet, at least to get this stable, put the wheel back on it, so it doesn't deteriorate any further. And then the set that I want to use with this is unrestored, and it's currently in storage, so I would need to get that working before we could start messing with this. I can't really test that CRT because they're weird. They have a different kind of base. It's European. But I do have a new old stock one in the box. And I have the entire separate unit from my Scott TV. In other words, I have 3 of these CRTs in various conditions. And I have an entire spare projection box. So I think no matter what, if I'm motivated enough, I can make this work. I'll provide a link in the description so you can check out the manual for this. Here's that broken off wheel, in case you're wondering what they look like. I thought they were locked to just go forwards and back, but no, they do rotate. So, usual, we'll remove rust, lubricate the surface, get that reattached. Not a complicated thing, it's just going to be a bit of work to get this presentable and functional. Here I am back in the basement workshop going through some more stuff I picked up on our expedition, and that would be TV tubes. If you're looking for TV tubes, I have a suggestion that you contact your local antique radio club, because it's pretty common for members to have gone through their tube stash and weeded out all the series string TV type tubes, which they have no use for. And you might be able to get some from them. So that's what these are. These are tubes, or tube caddies and boxes of tubes. Some of these are new old stock. Some of these are used pulls, and we'll see. I just barely started going through these. And they're basically series string TV tubes. So far, I've only pulled out these that I know I have use for in the immediate future. These are tubes used in Predictas. So after going through a few hundred, this is all I pulled out that I know, that I recognize and have a use for. So the rest of these, I'll hang on to them, but they're for newer sets. Just numbers I don't recognize, things I don't have a use for. Well, let's continue. So this is a tube caddy. Actually, I have an identical one to it, so I don't have 2 of these. At least I think they're both Westinghouse. They're both the same size and color. So notice how the sizes are not equal. Typically they have the larger octal type tubes on here, the sweep tubes, and these would be the miniature tubes on this side. And the bottom is often a free-for-all. So let's see what we have. Interesting. Characteristics of Sylvania receiving tubes. So it looks like it's a tube data book. I'm used to them being smaller and thicker. I haven't seen one in magazine format like this. So this will list your basic tube types, which is handy if you were looking through these and you didn't recognize some of these tubes, like a tube BN4. You could look it up in here and see what its characteristics are. Sometimes they'll tell you what they're typically used for. find a 2B for. Looks like this doesn't tell you what they're used for. But these days, of course, you can just Google the tube numbers, so not quite see. So here's a 2BN4. It is a triode VHF amplifier. Same characteristics as a 6BN4. Designed for series string receivers. Alright. Oh, well, looks like somebody went through this and cataloged some of them, which is something I am woefully late to do. So I've been sorting my tubes, putting them in bins, but I have not been keeping inventory of what I actually have. So after staring at tubes for years and years and years, I can pretty quickly go through these. It may seem crazy, but after you do this for a long time, it comes kind of second nature. So that's predicted tube. That's a predicted tube. That's a vertical output tube. That it's used in the 21-inch series strung sets. I forget what tube that is. Specifically, that's a sound tube for the 17-inch predictors. All these others I recognize, but I know that I don't need any. And none of my sets use them, in other words. I'm not saying I never will. I believe these are the IF tubes for predictors. That's a horizontal oscillator used in both the 17 and 21-inch sets. Pretty common tube though, 6CG7. You'll also find out that a lot of these tubes sub for each other. Sometimes you'll see two numbers on the box. Otherwise, you could look it up. So some of these that I'm glossing over, maybe I could use them, but I'd have to double check before I would try doing that. This is kind of how it's been going. I've gone through a couple boxes so far. Typically, I pull out half a dozen, and the rest I just don't have an immediate use for. 3BN4. So I'm starting to phase over to the 21-inch sets, and I'm keeping this handy to see. So now 3BN6 is what I'm looking for, or a 3AU6, or a 5AQ5. I'm not seeing any of those. Oh, there's a 3BN6. A couple 9BR7s. I think I need those. Yeah, 9BR7 sync separator and phase comparator. What's this big guy? It's an empty box is what that is. 6AV5. You may hear that number again in an upcoming video. I think I know what that is. Don't need it right now, but I think I may. I think that is an octal horizontal output tube without a plate cap and a tube shield. Alright, so let's see what's on this side. Should be the bigger tubes, yep. Holy grail I'm always looking for is horizontal output tubes for color roundies. But it's pretty rare to find one because they've already been picked through. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything I can use on this side. 6V6, sure, it's an audio output tube. Good tube to have, but I don't need any right now. And a 6SN7, sure, dual triode. Lots of things use those. But again, not an immediate need. Alright, one more side to go through. Here's the big reveal. Alright, sort of a mixed bag. Some octal, 12SN7s, yeah. A lot of electrostatic TVs I've been working on lately use those, so I'll pull that box out. Nope. Let me get into the used poles. 6 GH8s. I know those are infamous. There are certain RCA color TVs that go through those like crazy. 3 DT6, 6 CB6. So this is a good winter project to go through these, because I already know from taking a peek that there are a lot of used pulls in here that are just randomly thrown together. And I'll need to go through them all, figure out. A 30AE3 PY88, that is one I have never seen before. It's a Zenith, made in Holland. It's definitely for a newer TV than I'm used to working on. 6W6, no big deal. There's a rather poorly made tube. Boy, it's a really off center. And, all crammed in at the bottom. 12AV5, 12AV6, something like that. This is what you'll find too with newer tubes. The quality starts getting lower and lower as they were slowly being phased out. Alright, a couple more boxes below this to go through, but so far, so what did I pull out? 10 tubes or so that I recognize. The rest, well, they'll get stashed away. Alright, next box. Looks like a lot of used tubes in here that somebody went to the trouble of boxing. Some are marked okay, some question mark. Regardless, I would test these before using them. Really nothing jumping out at me. Sure, I recognize some, like a 6AL5, it's a dual diode, really common tube, but the stuff I'm working on right now, or will be working on soon, doesn't use them. Another 3B and 6, we got one hit. Let's see, some octal tubes. Nope. 40KD6. Another 40KD6. Nope. Let's see, we have a Kirkland container here. Kirkland cashews. Whole bunch of used pulls. So there may be some stuff in here I could use, but I need to go through them, sort them out, test them. That takes a lot of time. What else? Let's see, we have a Nike shoebox here. Well, older stuff. 6N7s, man. I got a whole bucket full of those. They seem like they would be more useful than they are. They're dual triodes, I believe. I'll pull one out for you. Yeah, 6N7 twin triode. I've yet to come across anything that uses them. I think the issue is that the cathodes are connected together, which limits its use. You can see they're designed primarily for service as Class B amplifiers. Alrighty, well, I have more, and this one in particular is the metal variety. They also come in glass varieties. What else? 6SA7s, SK7s, SQ7s. Those are good. These are used in All-American 5s. These appear to all be used, but assuming they're good, what could I have use for them? Hey, 6DQ6, horizontal output tube used in predicted TVs, the 17-inch. So pull that guy out. So it's got to be a 5U4, yeah. Very common rectifier. This looks a little different. 6883B, 8032A, looks like some sort of output tube, might be HF transmitter tube. Have to look that guy up. Hey, an I-tube. 1629. 2E26, that's pretty sure a ham transmitting tube. There's another one. Oh, this is 5R. No, it's an OC3, ruggedized military version. Have not seen one of these before. It's an octal tube. Well, normally an OC3 is an octal tube, but it's crammed into this odd base structure. So it looks like somebody may have gone through some ham or military gear to pull out some of these tubes. 6x5, so I'll dig through those. Let's see, what is there? Shoebox. More loose used tubes, but I need to check these bad boys out. 829B and another 829B. Vintagey, like World War II era power triode RF amp type tubes. But I have seen people make audio amps out of them because they look cool and they put them up on top of the chassis so people can see them. Not very efficient or very practical when you get into the audio range, but because of the unique look, people will find a way. They'll find a way to make them work. They look pretty pristine. Some new tubes. 6AM8. I think that's used in projector TVs. And a ton more used tools to dig through, saw through. BQ5, that I believe is an audio tube used in predictors. And here's the final box. Why am I focusing so much on predictors? Because I have a dozen or so to restore coming up next, so I need to keep a stash of good tubes on hand. Nothing. These are all newer Compactron type series string tubes. I have no use for any of those. What's in here? Metal oxide varistor or something to that effect. Also there's a mauve. Bunch of oddball series string tubes. Nothing jumps out at me. You get the idea. So out of all these boxes, maybe I'll find 20 tubes. I have an immediate need for. The rest will get stored away for a rainy day. We'll go through them more thoroughly. I almost forgot this container. French butter cookies. Well, jupes, I don't think that's what's in there anymore, but let's find out. It's a bunch of used tubes. (22BH3). No idea, but I know it's a newer tube. Compactron type. Looks like we have a real mixed bag in here. (6GH8A). 6BA6. Look at enough of these, you can kind of tell just from the plate structure what they are. EL84. Big guy. Another 40 KD6. (6C9). I don't think I've seen one of those before. So it's interesting when you look at the structures, you can tell that there are two things in there, at least two, and they look different. So you know it's not a dual triode. Well, maybe they do look kind of similar. Maybe it is a dual triode. Or dual pentode. I don't know. Anyways, what else? Oh, I'll just have to dump the whole can. KD6 21 LR8. That's got to be a damper just by looking at it. Likewise, high voltage rectifier. Alright, I left one of the most interesting things for last, so let's just get to it. Alrighty, then lastly there is this, which may look familiar to some of you. Some of you might think you know what it is, but you're wrong. Well, at least you're partially wrong. Yeah, it is a Motorola portable TV. 7VT3, I think. It's the one model I don't actually have, so I think this does complete my collection of every Motorola 7-inch model and 8-inch model. However, it has this. That is not original. So what the heck are we looking at? Well, let's take a closer look at this meter face. It says field strength, handwritten, and scale on there. And I recognize this from I think from a Regency UHF converter box. So this is definitely added on, and it's cobbled together from bits and pieces from other stuff. It's my understanding from the previous owner, that this is a field strength meter that was added to the TV to aid in setting up an antenna on somebody's rooftop, or setting up a TV in a home that had a built-in antenna and deciding where in the room to put it, where you get the best signal strength. And there was actually a TV put out by National, if you saw my recent video where I got a wooden National TV7W. There's a TV7M metal cabinet variation that instead of having a speaker on either side, one of the speakers has been replaced with a meter for exactly the same reason. It was meant for installers to check the field strength. Later on, there were other versions where it was strictly just a meter in a box, so you didn't have to lug around a whole TV. But with this setup, you can not only look at the meter and see where the needle goes, you can actually see the image on the CRT. Now, the big question for me is, what do I do with it? Well, it just so happens, at least I'm pretty sure, I have a spare one of these. Well, that's assuming this is damaged, and I'm pretty sure it is, because it looks like at least this screw must be going through this plastic. So in other words, if I was to remove this, I'm sure they cut out a section there. If I was to remove this, this is going to look terrible. But I did acquire one of these some years ago that was missing a cover, and it was in rough shape, so I ended up parting it out, but I did save this. So, and it does have all the knobs, and it's Tolex covered, which over the years they tend to get pretty dirty and beat up, as is this one, but it's not horrible. I also just noticed they added or relocated the antenna input to the side here. Normally it'd be on the back. In fact, let's take a look at the back side of this. As we can see, there are feet here for when you're washing it, but there also should be feet on the bottom, and just from kind of feeling around, I think they are gone. So let's take a look. What do you think, Shadow? Well, yeah, all the feet are gone. See the stubs of a couple of them are still here. This one is pretty well mangled. It broke off the case. So I want to replace those if I'm going to be setting this thing down on this side. But hey, it does have the original back and power cords there. It's not horrible. Probably still be used. And yeah, it's a Motorola with TS4 chassis, TS4J variation. No idea what's going on inside, other than what I can peer through and see. It looks like it has the original metal ballast tube in there. As we saw when the cover was lifted up, the picture tube is there, but it shifted way back, so it's for sure loose in its mounting, and I'm sure the mask surrounding it has shrunken and deteriorated. Wow, okay. It wasn't the speaker being attached that was fighting me from getting the back cover off. Yeah, it's been relocated to the back cover, but there are wire extensions on it. No, that's what was fighting me. The goo. Look at all that goo. So what the heck is all that? Melted, hardened gunk. That's the mask that used to be around the picture tube that was holding it in place. This set must have been set upright for a long time. The foam-like material they put around the CRT to hold it in place and cushion it, support it, whatever they used, over time it melts and hardens. It's not rubber, it's some kind of synthetic something. And I'm used to seeing it having the set being stored this way, so it just dripped down. I've never seen it where it came all the way to the back of the set. That's going to be fun to get out. That's not as bad as you might think, because it's water soluble. Warm water and a bit of patience and the stuff just comes right off. But, yeah, wow. Yee. I know we can at least peek into this set. Otherwise, from what I can see, it's stock. So the tubes and there's the ballast and the electrolytics and the CRT. That's all completely normal. And there she is, with the obligatory dead spider carcass. There's what they hacked in. And I think that is the guts of a UHF converter. Probably been modified. This looks relatively modern, actually, compared to the rest of it. Looks like something from the 80s, almost. But man, this modification, I would think, would have been done back in the 50s. But who knows? What I do know is, wow, there's the rest of that melted mask. Eek. Just look at the front. So the meter was connected to this twisted pair of wires. I just clipped them off. It's going through a hole, going down, somewhere over here. I would think it would tie into the AGC, if I had to guess. While down here, let's get a better look at the rest of it. It looks to be stock. Oh, right down to the Motorola branded high voltage caps. Maybe that guy's replacement. I'm calling one that's green, tan, and black striped like that. I've worked on enough of these that at a glance I can just look stock, except maybe for that guy. Ceramic tubular cap, but I don't recall seeing one that looked like that. They generally look like that, and they're over here. I don't know why there'd be one over there. Could be a late production run change, maybe, or it's part of a subtle modification for whatever they repurpose this as. So yeah, that's where that ties in. Oh, one of the wires is going up inside the box. That's where the detector is. So that might be, could they be driving that meter directly from the detector? I would think they would load it down too much. So I think I would have a hard time if my goal was to get this working with the modifications as was intended with the modifications, because I don't know what it was supposed to do exactly. Because it looks like the guts from a UHF converter, so was this meant to measure the signal strength of UHF? And were they taking the output of this and feeding it into the set? So this would convert it from UHF to VHF, and then this would go through the VHF tuner and be amplified and detected, and that drove the meter at some point. Or was this repurposed to just be an RF amp or some such, and it was all VHF? I don't know. Or maybe you could do VHF and UHF. I don't know. I do know is we have a date code here. May 12th. That's gotta be 49, yeah. May 12th, 1949. There'll be a serial number on the back too. I've been maintaining a database of sorts of serial numbers and date codes. I'll add this to the list. As near as I can tell, they made about 100,000 TS4 chassis and about 100,000 TS18 chassis. And this would be towards the end of the line for the TS4s. So there's the inside, and oh yeah, of course, they cut out a huge chunk of that plastic bezel. So there's a meter, there's a capacitor across the terminals. That's all we know. And here's a CRT, and you can see it's completely bottomed out. That should be up a couple inches and pressed forward further. Alrighty, removed all of the modifications, put the chassis back in, removed the bezel, cleaned off the face of the CRT a bit. It was really dirty. Still have some residual mask to remove. Do that another day. Cleaned up the Tolex a little bit with a damp rag, put the knobs back on, and I realized, hey, wait a minute, the logo's missing. And this is why I save everything, because I happen to have a spare. Made it of cast aluminum, I believe, painted gold, and it goes into these 3 holes like so. Alright, so I will endeavor to find the mask, or rather the plastic bezel. It's got to be around somewhere, because I had this, basically, I had this model. And I'm pretty sure it had this. I'll have to go back through my photos. I'm talking years ago, so who knows. But yeah, they made a lot of these. There's a lot of bits and pieces around. If I ask and hunt, eventually I'm sure I can find one. Because otherwise, the more I kind of work around on this setup, the more I like it. Having all the original knobs in really good condition is a treat. The decals on here are crisp and clean. Tolex is looking pretty nice after a little bit of cleaning, so I think we got a winner here. There should be an antenna in the lid. It's missing. Not the end of the world. But this needs to be addressed. That's where the antenna would snap in. There should be a 1/4-inch phono jack, I believe, up there. That shouldn't be any big deal to track down and pop one in there just to fill that hole in. Hey, one last thing before I put this away. I thought I would make a little attempt at cleaning up the top, because it had some pretty bad stains. I figured I had nothing to lose. Warm water wasn't really doing anything, and I thought, well, why don't I try Gojo? Works great on wooden, vintage wooden radio cabinets, and on these stains, which I thought were just not going to come off. I figured they were paint or oil or something that would just permanently discolor this. They're actually coming off, and overall it's doing a pretty respectable job of cleaning it up without seeming to damage anything, so I think that's a win. I think it could maybe improve with another pass or two, but even so, that is a whole lot better. So I can heartily recommend the Gojo pumice-free hand cleaner for cleaning this old type of Tolex material without causing any harm. Another item is this vintage Sencore color bar generator, a model CA122B. Don't know much about it. Sure, I have modern solid state color bar generators, but I like some of this vintagey stuff. Not that I would use this day to day on my workbench, but it can be interesting to see what kind of capabilities it had and how they did the circuitry. Plus, sometimes these have interesting features, like I just noticed. This can do IF. Variable, it looks like, from 20 to 50. Did not realize that when I first saw this. That's awesome, because a lot of the color bar generators, the modern one I have, just does the RF, channels 2 through whatever into the UHF range. It doesn't do IF. Or rather, it does IF, but it only does the modern 44. So that's cool. Although I don't think there were any color TVs that used the earlier 22 megahertz IF, but there certainly were black and white sets. So I'm thinking this could also be used for black and white sets, but limited patterns. So you get color bars, horizontal lines, vertical lines, crosshatch, and dots. So sure, the crosshatch would be useful on a black and white set for doing the linearity. It's like the pointer must have worn off this knob because there's no indication of which mode I'm in. So I can do IF, RF. So in RF mode, you can do channels 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And in IF mode, it's variable from 20 to 50. Interesting for output, there's a level control. RF, first IF grid, second IF grid, third IF grid. This must set the output level to something they predetermined by looking at the number of common designs and set that level as appropriate depending on where you inject the signal. Chroma, you can vary the amount of colorness, I guess you could say. You can also do video out up to 30 volts peak to peak, minus or plus. I guess as you go through the zero mark, it'll invert the signal 180. And you can also do sync signals. So out of this, you can get vertical and horizontal sync, composite video, 900 hertz audio. Where does the RF come out? I guess that will come out here. I would expect it to be a BNC connector, but it's not. Let's see if the manual is available online. I'm curious to know what's inside of this, because I noticed there's a flip on the back. Hey, we have cables. You can also see in here there's a whole bunch of tubes in there, so this is pretty old. This is all tube-based. Alright, what kind of cables do we... Oh, so the RF out comes out the back. Looks like somebody made a little homemade something or another. It's kind of rough. And we have clips. Red, green, blue. I do not know what these would go to. I would think the gun's on a color set, but I don't know. I'll have to, again, research that. And a bunch of trimmers on here to calibrate it. Boy, that was a lot to get through. Let's wrap this video up with another look at some of the Duo View info. So here is the installation instructions, courtesy of the Early Television Foundation Museum. Let's give you some idea of what's involved in hooking it up. It's not trivial. There's no composite connector on the back. You have to go into your TV chassis and cut some wires. Not just splice them in, but cut them so that the mode switch on the Duo View can switch between the TV, direct view TV and the projection unit. So there's a 6-prong socket. You have to make those changes on, so that'll be your video brightness and filament supply, and the other will be your vertical and horizontal deflection. That's the one that really threw me. I figured you'd have to get into it for the video signal, but I thought it would have its own sync and yoke driving circuits, but no. Which explains why there's a limited range of TVs that this is compatible with, because it has to have a compatible the vertical and horizontal output circuit, similar deflection angle, that kind of thing. So you definitely need to do some surgery on your donor TV. And I think I only have one end of these cables, so I need to find matching plugs or sockets, whatever I'm missing. And this is the actual little chassis that is inside of the Duo View. So I think it says auxiliary brightness, so it has its own brightness circuitry and a focus circuit. Must be I'm guessing there's a focus coil around that little projection CRT. And I'm not sure what this all does. Maybe that's an extra video amp or some such. I think that's a video in, capacitor coupled amp, and then looks like it goes to the cathode on the little 3NP4. And on the front of it, the 3 controls, and I'm missing that one now. We've got a tilt adjustment that must be to kind of compensate for the viewing angle, to make sure it's like a keystone kind of adjustment. And then this is your mode for direct view versus movie screen view, and then brightness and focus. And it looks like on the back of the set we have some additional controls for height and width and focus, and another brightness control. They talk about keystoning some more. Now I got to correct myself. I was looking at some original 3NP4 protogram info. What I was wrong about is the size. So in this they talk about a 16 by a 12-inch viewing size, but the Duo View says you get a 3 by 4 foot viewable image, so that's a substantial difference. Now, as for the TV, I'm planning on hooking it up to, perusing my Flickr site here, where I have photos of most of the sets that I own. I'm thinking of using this guy, which is a 2nd generation RCAs. These would be the 1st generation, which could also work, but they're kind of valuable, so I'd rather leave them original and rather go with this guy, which is a little bit of a refinement. So these sets are from 46 and have 30 tubes. This is a set from 48 that has 24 tubes. But it's a similar design. They just cut a few corners, reduced the tube count a little bit. It's still heavy, uses the same 10-inch CRT. In other words, it's completely compatible with the Duo View, and it's the type of set that was commonly paired up with it. And it's a little on the ugly side, if you ask me. It's a wooden box that has kind of this boxy cutout, or I don't know what you call that. It sticks out, and I think this is fake wood grain. And it's got some chips on the cabinet, so I don't think we're losing anything there. That's been buried away all these years, but I recall it's in pretty good shape. I have not restored it yet, so that would be. So we got a few steps to go through here. First thing I want to do is glue up the Duo View cabinet such that it's stable. Maybe start cleaning up the insides. Pull this out of storage and pull the chassis on this and restore this. So it's going to be a little bit of work, but I think it'll be a fun journey. That's going to be it for now. I hope you enjoyed this look at the St. Louis expedition. Thanks for watching.